Good afternoon, everyone. This is Bobby Bull with the Project Management Office in Tallahassee. Today we're going to be going over our next installment of the Project Management Task Team webinar series. Today we're going to discuss project coordination, more about communication, team building, and stakeholder engagement. Today we're going to have two of our individuals from our districts, Nicole Mills and Curleen Thomas, who are going to help with our presentation. Curleen is in District 6, and Curleen is the Metropolitan Planning Administrator for District 6. She has been with the department for almost 18 years. She joined the Planning Department in 2007 after working in the Financial Services Office as a Senior Contract Auditor. Curleen graduated from Barry College with a bachelor's degree in Business Administration and from Florida International University with a master's in International Business. And Nicole Mills is our DCPME down in District 1. She's been with the department for almost 25 years, has been a part of project management for 17 years, 9 of those as the DCPME. Prior to finding her calling in project management, Nicole worked in the roadway design and drainage section. Nicole graduated from Virginia Tech with a degree in civil engineering and is a registered professional engineer in the state of Florida. With that, we're going to move on with our presentation, and I am going to pass this along. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place, from George Bernard Shaw. This presentation will provide tips on how to ensure accurate communication is occurring. This can be achieved by following the simple steps of communicating openly, honestly, and timely. In this workshop, you will gain knowledge of communication, team building, stakeholder analysis, and public outreach. Each of these items is necessary for a project to successfully work its way through the various phases. There are 3 modules in this workshop. Each module is necessary for a successful project, and each supports the others. Module 1 is broken into 2 parts, communication and team building. The communications portion will describe different methods for communicating and how to communicate effectively with each method. The team building portion will discuss how to build an effective team and communicate within that team.
There are many forms of communication. Communicating to your project team is crucial for your project success. In this module, we'll discuss the following types of project communication: verbal communication, nonverbal communication, email etiquette, negotiation skills, and making an impact. Poor communication to your project team could lead to uncontrolled negative message about you. Verbal communication is the art of being able to say something with the least words possible. The listener retains about 10% of what you say. Keeping your verbal communication short and simple makes you a better verbal communicator. When communicating verbally, your word choice is very important. Words will have different meaning to different people. Using long and difficult words or jargon alienates your audience. Demonstrating how well you know hard words distracts your listeners. In short, the acronym TIF will help you remember to keep it short and simple. What you do not say is sometimes more important than what you do say. Your nonverbal communication tends to dominate your message. When communicating with your project team face-to-face, your body language and posture is what influence most of your communication. Having knowledge of how nonverbal communication works is essential because it will help you monitor what you are projecting. Furthermore, understanding nonverbal communication will help you identify issues that may not be discussed verbally. There are 2 basic categories of nonverbal communication: static and dynamic. Static features are those that deal with the following aspects of nonverbal communication: distance and orientation. This is the amount of space between people, and it could indicate attraction, conflict, or avoidance. How people place themselves indicates their attitude. As a general rule, people should maintain a minimum of 3 feet between themselves to avoid feelings of discomfort. Posture. How a person carries themselves is another indicator of their attitude. A closed posture, for example, crossing your arms, could indicate a formal attitude. Physical contact. Behaviors like shaking hands demonstrates a willingness to engage a person. Avoiding any contact at all could be interpreted as apprehension. Dynamic features are those that are observed, such as a person talking or interacting with another person. Here are some basic nonverbal communications in this area. Facial expressions like smiles, frowns, yawning. Gestures such as clenched fists indicating tension. And eye contact. Failure to maintain eye contact could be seen as avoidance. Understanding nonverbal communication signals takes time to learn, and having positive nonverbal communication will evoke trust from others. Different meanings can be interpreted based on the volume, tone, and word emphasis used. Let's say the sentence is with emphasis on the bolded word. The first line, I didn't say you were late, may indicate someone else said you were late. The second line, I didn't say you were late, may indicate that even though I didn't say you were late, it was implied that you were late. The third line, I didn't say you were late, may indicate someone else was late. And the fourth line, I didn't say you were late, may indicate you may not have been late, but you were, fill in the blank, absent or busy. Audience awareness is vital. Misplaced word emphasis can cause a breakdown of trust, communication, and teamwork.
Let's take a look at written communication. Your written communication leaves a lasting impression on those who read your documents. Writing is a large part of your communication, and it should be done well. Great written communication will help you demonstrate your value and ability to convey ideas. In this module, you will learn the basic structure of the following types of written communication. Okay, so we have emails, scopes, and what the materials needed for a successful meeting, such as a meeting agenda, meeting minutes, and meeting action items. Then we have reports and executive summaries. Emails can be used in many different situations. Let's begin with this form of written communication first. Emails can be forwarded to anyone and are a public record. Be mindful of your content and tone. Don't send or forward defamatory, offensive, racist, or obscene remarks or images. Don't overuse reply to all or blind copy. Don't send emails when you're angry. Don't copy up as a means of coercion. Avoid using all caps. If you don't know the answer to a question, say so and offer to get back to the other person later. Try not to put people on the spot with your questions. If you don't hear back from the recipient of your email in 3 days, follow up and ask for the status. Effective writing is essential for project coordination. Many times you will need to follow up with a contact by writing or an email. Email is the most basic form of written communication and can easily be taken out of context. Understand the elements that make up an email will ensure you are writing at the minimum standard. For the recipients, select the recipients correctly. The person you are addressing or the persons you are addressing, the email should be listed in the to line, depending on the topic of the email. The recipient in the to line will be the ones returning information to you. Also, pay close attention to your subject line. The subject should always be filled out with the project name and key topic of the email. The subject line should immediately alert the recipient as to the topic, allowing them to prioritize their work. Salutation. If you know the person's name but you have not met them, use Mr., Mrs., or Miss and their last name only. If they are co-workers or it is appropriate to use their first name, then go ahead. Let's look at what should be in the body of the email. Try keeping this brief and specific. Emails should not be too long. You should use a space between paragraphs. This will give your emails a better appearance. Make sure to list specific due dates or responses. Complimentary close. There are many ways to close your letter or your email. To make sure it's simple, use sincerely or thank you. This is a happy medium between the very formal and the very informal. Signature block. After your complimentary close, add 2 spaces and then type your full name, working title, place of employment, working address, and telephone contact number. Receiving and responding to an email is a large part of a project manager's job. Using proper email etiquette will ensure you are not offending others or being rude. The email you send can be forwarded and remain in the inboxes of your recipient indefinitely. Here are some tips to ensure that your emails are well written and displaying good email etiquette. Avoid using email to write a long letter. Most people will not read entire email if they have to scroll through it. Avoid getting straight to the point on your email. Do not forget to be polite and use common courtesies. For example, before asking for what you want, ask how they are or how was his or her weekend. Do not use shorthand or text messaging abbreviations in your email. That's a no-no. Make sure to use spell check and that you use proper grammar in your emails. Remember, your written communication speaks volumes about you. Remember to say please and thank you. If you're contacting someone who is unfamiliar to you, avoid using his or her first name. Instead, use Mr., Mistress, etc. Never type your email in all capital letters, in bold letters, or different text sizing. This is seen as screaming and it is difficult to read. Always read what you have written prior to sending the email. Never send an email in anger. Sometimes it is best to step away. Do something else and come back or take a breath. Following these simple guidelines should help you write effective and polite emails. Okay, let's take a look at meeting agendas. The meeting agenda should have purpose or objective. Someone being invited to the meeting should know what is the purpose of the meeting. It should have a date and a location, and if there are equipment needed for this meeting, this should be reserved ahead of time. The required attendees should know what their function is at the meeting and what role they're expected to play. And the agenda, of course, should be well defined and an outcome should be determined. A sign-in sheet is needed, and also there should be a designated person taking the meeting minutes. Then we should also track the action items and list the responsible parties. And finally, follow-up and coordination is critical to having productive meetings. Then we're going to look at executive summary. The executive summary is a short report that can be placed at the beginning of a large report, or it can be presented as its own document. The executive summary presents only the most important information to executives, managers, and/or supervisors. In order to be successful in writing the executive summary, your document should leave your reading audience with the following understanding: nature of the subject, essential points, decision needed, alternative with cost and benefit, your recommendations, sources of additional information, Sources of additional information. Here is a brief outline of what should be included in your executive summary. Title page, title, version, author or authors. Abstract should be very brief. Body. Every page has a footer with the following elements: subject, version, authors, running page number, and total number of pages. The title page is page 0, or more properly, page I. Project managers will have numerous opportunities to write scopes of services. The project scope defines the intent of the project. It lists the criteria that should be adhered to. It defines the deliverables and the due dates. The scope gives clear direction of what the department's responsibilities are and what the firm's responsibilities are. Who is going to do what? Pretty much that's what it's saying. The scope needs to be reviewed internally by any group or individuals who may have input on these items. This is necessary to ensure the accuracy of the scope prior to being forwarded or finalized. A well-written scope can be an indicator of a prepared and knowledgeable project manager. And that's what we want. Okay, so we're going to talk a little about reports. Reports are used to discuss finding or results. Reports can range in length due to the complexity of what the report is trying to communicate. Reports are used to communicate to organizational leaders all the information they need about the issue and the result. Reports are meant to present as much fact as possible in a concise format. Management may use your report to make decisions. And we're going to look at the different sections of a report. Title section. This could be the title page, or it includes a table of contents if the report is lengthy. Summary. This should contain a concise description of the main points, conclusion, and recommendation. Introduction. In this section, you should provide the background of the situation or problem and demonstrate to your target audience the importance of this report. Give a brief description of how the information is arranged. Keep the language simple in this section. Main body. This portion of the report may contain several sections with subtitles. You may use technical words or jargon, but try to define concepts as you go along. Prioritize your information with the most important facts first. And of course, your conclusion. Your conclusion should be logical and should strive to pull the investigation together. You may also provide options for the future. Remember to write this section like the introduction in plain English. Recommendations. Provide a suggestion. Make clear and determined statements in plain English. The appendices section. In this area, you will put your technical data that supports your report. The language here can be very technical.
Making an impact on others does not take a lot of effort. You do not have to be flashy or constantly be funny. In fact, the most impact is made when you demonstrate a sincere interest in the other person. Being genuine with others creates the most impact. Being very polished could be seen as insincere, hindering your impact. Here are some simple ways to create impact with others. Communicate up, down, and across supervisory chain. We call this avoiding silos. Talking with peers in different units broadens your knowledge base and also introduces you to others who can be successful members of a team. Talking with others helps build relationships. Project management is all about building relationships. Be a seeker of feedback. Asking for feedback demonstrates your attitude towards learning and improving. Be humble. Ask for help and feedback, as this will let you know how you did. People will see you as confident, yet willing and open. This is powerful in the workplace. Be enthusiastic about other people. Believe strongly in positive relationships. Remember that others are more likely to help you out when you need a quick response if they feel you value them. Being enthusiastic about others is being enthusiastic about things they're interested in. Smile when interacting with them. This makes others feel important and creates an impact in other people's lives. For all of these, it is vital that you be a listener. Listen more than you talk. People like to be heard and understood. Listening to other people's recommendations demonstrates you value his or her thoughts, which creates a huge impact with them. Together, we will succeed, and together, we will face our challenges. As a project manager, you will have to have some negotiation skills. Negotiating is a skill that should build relationships by creating win-win situations. The goal of negotiating is to get the best deal or outcome. However, if the negotiation turns out poorly for the other party, you will hurt your chances of networking in that direction. Who knows? The company that you just negotiated with could be a place you might want to represent in the future. Here are some steps to creating a win-win outcome in negotiating. First, you need to determine what you need and want. As you prepare for negotiating, take time to assess what it is that you want to happen. Learn more about the other party in the negotiation. Find out what motivates them and what they would consider a success in their world. Work towards meeting their needs. You should not work towards a take-all situation. Structure the negotiation talks. Create an agenda and avoid getting off topic into other discussions. If other topics come up, suggest bringing them up in another meeting. If you do not reach an agreement, call time and meet later on. Avoid extending the talks because being tired leads to poor decisions. In my years as project management engineer and a project manager, I have negotiated with many different firms on many different types of projects. It has been my experience that it's better to give the firm a few more hours if they really insist on it, because later on we may have to ask them to do something quickly, and they're less likely to raise a flag if something needs to be done in a hurry. They're more likely to help you out if they feel like during negotiations they've met in the middle. Project managers also face many different kinds of communication challenges and issues. Challenges and issues are common to every project. The most common challenges and issues are schedule and funding, changes in leadership, and changes in political climate or policy. A project manager needs to constantly be aware of the project schedule and funding sources. Knowing critical dates and project status will enable you to quickly determine if a project can be completed earlier should future phases receive funding. Changes in leadership can be a potential challenge or issue. A change in leadership can be at the project team level. Somebody at the firm leaves. Somebody internal leaves. It could be internal to the department at the district or state level, such as the district secretary or the state secretary. Each change in leadership brings new expectations and potential delays to a project as new leadership becomes familiarized with the project. Changes in political climate or policy can alter the project's scope, schedule, and funding. Political climate will change with every election, from the local government mayor or county commissioner to the state governor or the United States president. The project team should always be ready to respond to any elected official question. A word of caution, though. The district public involvement staff, your PIO officer, needs to be informed and copied in on any communication from and to elected officials or their aides. Florida has a very broad public records rule that it follows. There is a database that needs to be updated in order to abide by the Sunshine Law. This database needs to log any communication that state employees have with elected officials. Issues and crisis communication planning. At times, you may be confronted with a pressing issue or crisis. Planning for such situations will help to position you favorably in what may be a time where chaos is prevalent. Having a plan before a crisis occurs will help you take better control of the situation and project confidence to your audience. Here we will talk about gauging crisis level, providing feedback and insight, how to distribute the information, and tracking the overall effect. Each of these topics will help you to be prepared for times when a crisis occurs. Let's talk about gauging the crisis level. By crisis, it could be anything from a call from your director, it could be a call from the state secretary, central office staff. For ease in language, we're just going to call it a crisis. Being ready to confront a crisis is an opportunity to demonstrate your value in leadership. Being caught off guard will leave you paralyzed and contribute little value to the situation. When a crisis occurs, gauging the situation is essential in order to determine how extensive the problem is or how extensive the request is. Once you gauge the crisis, you are able to determine action. Remember to remain calm so you can be seen as a leader. Know what happened. Sometimes initial reports are inaccurate and sketchy. Your goal is to determine what actually happened. What is the actual request? Ask several resources and contacts if you're not sure. Take notes and compare the information. If you see discrepancies, then the crisis or request has not been clearly assessed yet. What is the extent of the impact? Or how bad is it and who is impacted? This is essential because some form of communication management will need to happen. Who is liable and what are the ramifications? Once you determine what has happened and what is the extent of the impact, you will need to sit down with your project team and determine the liability and ramifications. Some things to consider are: what is the legal or liability involved? What is the cost? What happens now? Who is supposed to do what? A neutral point of view is always necessary. Waiting for a crisis to begin planning your communication is the wrong thing to do. In a crisis, you will have little time to sit down and think of all the people that need communication. In fact, some crises may only require specific people to be contacted. A communication plan is a simple way of organizing the communication process. It should be done in advance and kept accessible for you or someone else who is your backup in case you're not available. A basic communication plan might include who to contact and what needs to be communicated, how to contact them. When should the communication occur? Who is the responsible person for doing the communication? This is vital when you have a call from an elected official or somebody from the central office trying to move some money in, advance a project. Those calls always come when you're not expecting it, and most likely it will be your director or your secretary who have to respond. You need to be able to format the response so that they can just simply forward it on to the requester. Once a crisis happens, or once a request is made, it's good practice to monitor effects on a project. There are many areas to monitor. Neglecting to monitor a situation could lead to negative information circulating, damaging the image of the project and the project team. A good method of tracking the effects is to scan articles online. What is the internet saying, and what are different media outlets saying? You and/or your public information officer should monitor the statements, reactions, and respond to the reports that could be damaging. A simple tool to use is a tracking sheet. Tracking sheet would contain the date and time of the article or the negative response. How was the data found? Who said what? How popular was the source that you found the information? Does it affect your organization? Does it affect the project? And can a response be made? In today's age of social media, it's good to monitor social networking sites for blogs and comments about the project. Many times you cannot directly change the information being reported, but you will be knowledgeable if asked via a different communication forum. Management should encourage people to convey both good and bad news. Without all of the facts, management may be hindered in making the best possible decision. Don't assume rumors are facts. Always research an issue and go to the source. Give credit where credit is due. Thanking others and recognizing others for their assistance will go a long way towards building relationships and towards a project's success. Be clear, accurate, and relevant. Say it simpler and in a way your audience will remember. Closing thoughts on communication. Say it sooner. The longer it takes to make your statement, the more rampant uncertainty and rumors could take off. Say it simpler. Say things so people understand what you're saying. Use plain language. Don't use large words. Say it stickier. People forget what they hear. Use catchphrases. People will remember that.
Okay, thank you, Nicole and Coraline. That was a really good overview of communications. Now we're going to move on to the second half of our module 1, and we're going to be talking about team building. Project coordination requires teamwork. Many teams will be needed for successful delivery of a project, and it's project manager's responsibility to keep all the teams moving forward. So let's go ahead, and Nicole and Coraline will go into a little bit more about team building.
We will start out looking at team building by looking at the different types of teams. We have here the traditional team, we have virtual or cyber teams, task force teams, self-directed teams, and also team spirit model. Each team should have some fundamental principles by which they operate, and what every team should have is a set of norms. These are behaviors that are expected from every team member, and it is advisable and recommended that each team jointly develop their team norms. It is advisable that each team norms are respect all members of the team, let one person speak at a time, participate, learn and be curious, plan ahead, and we could think of other norms like one for all for one and one for all, be on time. There are other norms that are essentials you could create. And next we're going to talk about a team building model called the TORI team building model. And the T stands for trust, that each team member needs to trust that the team will do right by them and that they're going to be doing what is best for the team in return. And then openness. Share everything with your team. It doesn't matter how bad it may look or how detrimental, but the team should know what's going on if it affects the project. And then the realization, this is that you actually need to work together and have the realization that this needs to be, whatever needs to be done should be shared, openly shared. The independence. The team enjoys the independence, the benefit of each teammate based on the strength and weakness of each other. Coming together will give a good product. Let's look also at some of the team activities. Evaluate the way the team is working. At some point, stop and evaluate the way the team is working. Examine how the group handles agreement and conflict and how group members relate to each other. Analyze or allocate the way work is being performed, and let's look for fatal flaws because this is important for the project. Let's not move forward without addressing fatal flaws. Evaluate teamwork. Examine how the group handles agreement and conflict and how the group relates to one another.
There are 5 stages of team development. These stages are necessary in order for the team to grow, face challenges, find solutions, and deliver results. Forming. In this stage, most team members are positive and polite. Some are anxious as they haven't fully understood what work the team will do. Others may be excited about the task ahead. Storming. In this phase, people start to push against the boundaries established in the forming stage. This is a stage where many teams fail. There's often conflict between team members, working styles, which causes frustration. Norming. Team members start resolving their differences and appreciate each other's strengths. Performing. When hard work leads to the team's end goal without interpersonal friction, which interrupts the work. Adjourning. The team has achieved the goal, and it is not necessary that it remain functioning. There are many important factors in team development. As is the case for any relationship, commitment and trust are vital for a team's success. The team must have a purpose. Everyone is busy. If team members do not see a purpose for the team, then they will not participate. Communication needs to have every team member included, no single member left out. Leaving a team member out of communication chain can lead to hurt feelings and disengagement. It is important to get all team members involved. Involved team members stay engaged in the goal of the team and result in a successful project. Process orientation is where everything gets going, the kickstart of the team.
Let's look how the team should address solving problems. The first step in solving problems is to be aware that you have a problem. And many times the way a team will identify the problem is by listening to all teammates. Every team member should have a say, and every team member's concern should be addressed, no matter how minor. Once the problem is identified, then the team should seek to analyze the causes of the problem. The team also should define what the real problem is, because many times there may be just the symptoms of the problem that is being played out. The team has to go to steps to dig deep and decide what the problem is. Once the problem is identified, there has to be some decision making, and the team may need to brainstorm or just discuss to what some of the alternate solutions are by seeking input from each team member. Once input is received from each team member, then every single input and proposed suggestion or solution, alternate solution, should be evaluated. The team should agree on the best solution. Once the solution is decided on, then the team should go to planning and organizing and deciding that the solution the team is going to make, and it has to be the team's decision. And the team needs to stick with the decision made. Once that decision is made, the plan and action plan should be put in place, and then outcomes should be determined. The implementation of the plan will depend on every team member, and every team member should be committed to the results and outcome of this implementation plan. We'll continue talking about solving the problem. The phase one is the perception that there's a problem. Then we have to determine where this problem is. And many people will want to say, whose problem is it? But the truth is, the problem is the team's. And many times, what we see being displayed, as I mentioned earlier, are the symptoms of the problem. And then for phase two, with the decision making, we identify alternate solution and choose the best solution. What needs to be done, then when in the planning stage, we have to decide what needs to be done, who will do it, what resources will be needed, and how much time it will take.
Resolving conflict. Most of us dislike conflict. We want everything to go smoothly at work. We want everyone to like one another and us. But is this realistic? Most of the time it isn't. Conflict can be a positive thing. Through conflict, you can see others' points of view. Through conflict, you can find out that maybe there is something else that can be done to make a project better. Working through conflict can uncover creative and innovative ideas. You might want to consider taking a conflict resolution class. At the end of the webinar, there will be a list of classes that you can take if you're interested, and the names and the course numbers will be on a slide at the end.
Deciding what to wear. Sometimes deciding what to wear is a stressful event. Here's a helpful tip to make deciding what to wear a little easier, and it's called the PAIR concept. The acronym stands as following: place, environment, attendees, and reason. Place. Determine where the event is to be held. If it's a fancy restaurant, then you know what business casual or professional is more where it should begin. If it's a casual place like a grill, then maybe you have the ability to go more casual. Your environment. The environment is also a helpful indicator of what to wear. If the event is outdoors, on a boat, a beach, or golf course, then this is a little less formal or requires special clothes. Who's going to be there? Who will be attending the event? For example, if your company's CEO or say the secretary or some of the other state officials are there, then you'd probably be better off to dress more formal. Why are you dressing up? What's the event? What's the key reason for being there? Is this going to be a reunion of professionals, or is this going to be something more casual? So just find out why you're actually going to be there. And the pair concept is a helpful guide on how you're deciding what to wear. The next time you're invited to a function, you should ask some of these questions, which may help you decide best how to dress for the event. All right, we've wrapped up the first module, and now we're going to move on to our second module, talking more about stakeholder engagement. Project coordination involves more than internal staff and consultants. Stakeholders are a key to successful project coordination. Stakeholders help in defining the intent of a project. Stakeholders can include, but are not limited to, local government, elected officials, citizen interest groups, homeowners associations, and business owners. Stakeholders' concerns can give a project member a better understanding of when and where to become involved. Constraints faced by state, regional, and local agencies in making decisions during the various phases can necessitate different levels of stakeholder involvement.
Let's talk some more about stakeholders' engagement. Successful analysis of stakeholders can ensure the success of a project. Through the elected officials and local government staff, stakeholders help develop the Florida Transportation Plan. Homeowners Association and local businesses, with assistance from elected officials and local government staff, define the project constraints and variables, and they also provide avenues for public involvement. Most likely, the project staff does not live in the vicinity of the project. Asking stakeholders what their vision of the project is can help define the scope of the project and avoid costly rework and delays. Local stakeholders also hold meetings, and the project team may not be aware of that. Many times, if stakeholders are involved early, they will invite project staff to the meetings, allowing for vital project information sharing. Early coordination with stakeholders and public should be maintained. For projects funded by the Federal Aid Highway Program, states must have a FHWA-approved public hearing program. Public engagement activities and reasonable notice of public hearing throughout the entire NEPA process. Every public meeting needs to have appropriate planning and preparation. How project information is presented may depend on the target audience. Public meetings need to be properly noticed. Keeping track of the noticing avenues and the timelines is very vital. If the avenues and timeliness are not followed, a meeting may need to be postponed, causing schedule delay. Many times it is best to start at the end, when the meeting is to be held, and back into all other activities. That is like working backwards. That's the best way to do it many times. Know the constraints going into the meeting scheduling, such as holidays, required public notice and time frames, and local committee meeting dates, such as your citizens community, your biped community, your aesthetics community. Be aware of all these meeting dates. It is a good practice and very advisable to notify elected and appointed officials prior to any other interested parties. Let's talk some more about the functions of the internal staff and the local partners.
Going off of what Curleen just talked about for the communication plan for public meetings, there's a number of slides that we'll go over on approach and timing as to give some guidelines on how to schedule these meetings. Throughout the years, the department has become a little bit more open and willing to discuss projects with local entities. It's been evolving. The practice now, we go into with a statement, we're going to tell our story. By telling our story, we're partnering with communities, we're figuring out what the intent of the project is, figuring out what will make their community a success. So each target audience has a suggested coordination procedure. For internal staff, as soon as you know the date of the public meeting, you want to put it on their calendars and send them an email letting them know what it is. You want to make sure the project information, the project manager, the public involvement contact person is all listed in the invite. You need to make sure you tell them the meeting location, date, and time. Internal people, depending on your internal process, may need to book travel time, or the project manager should book it for them. You want to make sure they show up to the meeting on time. And ensure the necessary people can make it to the meeting before you actually book it. If you have a big job with a lot of right-of-way, you want to make sure your right-of-way staff can attend. If you will have a job with a lot of noise issues on it, you want to make sure your noise specialist is able to attend. Do not go into these meetings without the right people behind you. Citizens and local businesses. On certain corridors, they're very commercialized. If the project has the potential to change their access or the way customers will enter and leave their businesses, could be good practice to talk to the business owners ahead of time so they don't all show up at the meeting and create a big diversion so the meeting gets off track. Some one-on-one conversations with citizens and local businesses ahead of time could iron out some uncertainties and have a more open discussion on concerns that they may have. You want to start talking with them as soon as you know, but for sure 4 to 5 weeks prior to the meeting. And then we put in the newspapers also 2 to 3 weeks prior and another ad 7 days prior, so the local businesses will have plenty of opportunity to get noticed, and the project team will have been out there talking with the citizens and local businesses. There's forms on the website that need to be filled out for the Sunshine Law, and that gets approved by your public information officer. There's audience on the internet. Notification starts on the internet on your project website about 5 weeks prior to the meeting with all of the same project information that we're showing on all the meeting invites, the project manager, the PIO contact, meeting location, date, and time. You want to keep the project website up to date with the most recent information. Elected officials, as Carlene already stated, we want to notify the elected officials before we send out any notice to the public. Notification of the elected officials can be done one-on-one or in the county meeting or an MPO board meeting as a group. Once the officials are notified, we will send an email from the director with all the project-specific information and the meeting information so that they have it on hand in case constituents call for them. We want to give the elected officials and their aides the information to answer the questions from the constituents up front so they don't have to make a call to the department and then call the constituent back. This is part of building a relationship with the officials also. Appointed officials. These are local government staff, such as your county manager, your public works director. They will get notice the same timeline as the elected officials. The email will come from, in District 1, we send the email from the project manager letting them know of all the meeting specifics. The public information officer can do the same email. The media, there's a few requirements with the media, and in order to notice a public meeting, you have to advertise it for the Florida Administrative Register, so they have you follow the appropriate sunshine law and public hearing requirements as indicated in the PD&E manual. You also have to do ads through the newspaper. The local papers that service the area of the project. It could be one paper, it could be free, it doesn't matter. If it covers the area, you need to have the ad for it. And here's the timeline for that, and it's the same meeting information. We don't change the information that's being presented. Everybody gets the same notification. Local partners. This could be a homeowners association, it could be your county staff, it could be your utility partners. They also get the same meeting notification. And then the attendees to the meeting. So the citizens that we're targeting to show up at the meeting. Federal Highway has requirements on the people that need to be noticed for the meeting. We also look at project aerials, and if there's a large homeowners association or a large shopping center that might be outside the required notification area, but the people living there and working there will use the project, maybe they're 500 feet away instead of 300 feet away. We make sure we extend the meeting invitation out to those people. You don't want to chop a homeowners association in half with the invitation to the meeting. You want to make sure if you have one house invited, you have all homes invited. You will mail the letter out to the attendees after you notice the elected officials. Attendees will show up the day of the meeting, and we'll have a PowerPoint video or project boards out for them to review. We give the people at the meeting a takeaway, a piece of paper to hold that explains the project and how to contact project staff and how to make comments.
Okay, a little bit about public outreach. This is an effective way to get your message around to those who may be affected by this by a project. Understanding just the basics of networking will help increase the success and delivery of the right message to everyone in the field. During this next portion, we're going to talk a little bit about how to be effective in your delivery and introductions and making great first impression to the public and to those who are affected by your project.
Creating an effective introduction. The first 2 minutes of your conversation is when most people form an opinion about you. This is why an effective introduction is necessary when networking. In fact, you may only have a few minutes with the person you're meeting to share with them who you are and what you do. In order to create a good and lasting impression, use the MEETS technique to introduce yourself. MEETS stands for the following: make eye contact, emit a smile, engage a handshake, tell him or her your name, share what you do and whom you work for. Using these steps will ensure that your introduction gets your message across without taking too much time. Avoid talking too much at the beginning. Allow the other person to introduce him or herself. You should engage the person you are meeting by asking for their information. Short, effective introduction help to send positive message about you. Let's continue talking about making a great first impression. You do not have to do a lot to make a good first impression. Sometimes, if you focus too much on making a great impression, you could end up with the opposite results. Making a great first impression is not making it about you. It is about the other person. You want to make the person feel important and worth meeting. In order to do this, you should use the 5 Bs. The 5 Bs are the following. Be on time. Be on time. When you are on time, you demonstrate to the other person that you care about them and you value their time. Be yourself. When you're yourself, you come across sincere and show you want to build an honest relationship with the person. Be positive. When you're positive, you create an inviting environment. When you have a negative attitude, people will want to drift away from you. Be courteous. When you are polite and courteous, people will remember this aspect and create a lasting positive impression. Be brief. When you are talking, avoid talking too much. Being too talkative may be seen as a negative trait, and this could hurt your first impression. Your best first impression will be the ones when you show you care about the other person's time by valuing their time and thoughts and by actively listening to them. Make the interaction less about you and more about the other person, and you will make that first great impression. Okay, we're going to talk about the 3 steps process. The purpose of meet and greet is to mingle and meet as many people as you can during the time allowed. When there is not a strategy in place for meeting and greeting people, this could result in inefficiency in meeting new people. The goal is to meet with someone, talk with them for a few minutes, and then politely move to the next person. Having a strategy for meeting and greeting people is very helpful. A possible strategy to adopt is the 3M approach. In this approach, you meet the person, monitor the conversation, and then move on to the next person. So then here are some details of the strategy. So we're talking about the meet, monitor, and move on strategy. So meet. Here you introduce yourself and share some information about yourself. You create a great first impression by using some of the techniques mentioned earlier. Finally, you engage the person by asking questions that focus on them instead of you. Monitor. You should remain focused on the discussion. If you see the conversation becoming off topic or that the conversation is slowing down, then you need to move on. If you have a goal to meet a certain amount of people for that event, then plan a certain amount of time you will spend with each person. Either way, you need to monitor the conversation to determine when the conversation is becoming counterproductive. Move on. When the time is right, break the conversation politely and move on to the next person. Being honest is the best policy. You may need to tell the person you are speaking with that you wish to meet other people. Hand them a business card and offer to meet with them on another occasion. This is optional. You may want to do this or you may not want to do it. Thank the person you are speaking with and then continue mingling. One thing I usually say to the person is, "Oh, and the last thing I would like to discuss with you before I let you go." And that way they realize that it's all about them. So you may want to try that technique if it works for you. Okay, let's talk about the 4 levels of communication. Communication among humans can occur at 4 distinct levels. Understanding these levels will determine how you want to communicate. This in turn will help you plan your topics for discussion and avoid discussion that could be negative. There are 4 levels of conversation based on the degree and the amount of personal disclosure. These 4 levels are small talk. This is commonly referred to as the exchange of pleasantries. Then you have the fact disclosure. In this stage, you will tell the other person some facts about you, such as your job, who you are, what area of residence interests you. This is the getting to know you stage, and it aims to see if you have something in common with the other person. It is also a signal that you're opening up a little to the other person while still staying on neutral topics. Then we move on. The next one is viewpoints and opinions. In this stage of the conversation, you can offer what you think about various topics like politics, the new business model, or even the latest blockbuster. But I would recommend that you do not get into politics when you're on the DOT business. And then the personal feelings is a final stage. The fourth stage is the disclosure and acknowledgement of personal feelings. For instance, you can share about your excitement for the new project, or your worry about your son's upcoming piano recital. Depending on the context and the level of the friendship, you can disclose more personal subjects. This stage requires trust, rapport, and even a genuine friendship because of the intimate nature of the subject. But for DOT work, we will keep it to talking about the project and general topics.
Being nervous is a common occurrence when meeting new people, leading a large group of people, or speaking in public, especially about a controversial topic. Being overly nervous can be seen as a negative trait. You should always try to minimize being nervous. Nervousness comes from fear of the unknown. It comes from concern over the outcome. While being a little nervous is normal, extreme nervousness could result in a very negative experience for both you and the other people you are meeting. Here are 5 quick steps to help reduce nervousness. Prepare for the event. The more prepared you are, the less nervous you will be. Gather as much data about the event and create a plan. Avoid putting yourself in situations that will cause you to scramble at the last moment. Think positively before and throughout the event. Avoid thinking negative thoughts or worst-case scenarios. This type of thinking will only increase your nervousness. Practice what you are going to say and do. This is a common technique for public speaking, and it helps reduce the fear of speaking in public. This works the same for networking events. When at the event, focus on the present. Avoid thinking ahead. Make small goals that you want to achieve at the event. Thinking about future events because of the event could result in unneeded stress. Finally, remember to breathe deeply and monitor your physical reaction to the situation. Take breath. Everyone carries business cards. Our goal here is to make the best use of the business card in this day of electronic communication and information storage. Using business cards should not only be used for specific networking events or containing basic contact information. Here are some ways to increase the effectiveness of your business cards. Always keep business cards with you, even when you're on your personal time. This will enable you to give someone your card when an unexpected meeting occurs, or you just meet somebody that you've been trying to get a hold of and you see them in the shopping mall. This is a simple thing of slipping some of these cards in your wallet or placing some in a holder and carrying it in your purse. Whenever you have to use a scrap piece of paper, you can use the back of your business card. This way, the person receiving the card, even if they are not the intended party, will take it with them and keep it. This could lead to him or her giving it to someone else in the future. Always include a business card in all your correspondence. This will give the recipient something to put in their wallet or their Rolodex, or log into their Outlook contacts. Always give a business card to every new person you meet, even if they are not your intended audience. Your business cards are an effective tool for networking. The basic idea is to make them interesting and give them out whenever possible. When you are meeting people, it will be important for you to remember names correctly. Forgetting someone's name could be seen as a common problem, and this is usually forgiven. However, when you are able to remember names, people will find this a positive trait and they will be impressed. Use the CARE model to help you remember names better. Commit to remember names. Making a conscious effort to remember names will make this a priority when meeting people. Associate names to other things and events. When meeting someone new, try to associate that person's name to the event or place where you met them. When you do this, you will begin the memorization process. Repeat their name. Throughout your conversation with a new person, repeat their name as much as possible without being too obvious. Make sure you use their name when you say goodbye. Engage yourself in the conversation. When a person introduces himself or herself and they say their name, become engaged and focus on learning about that person. Avoid thinking about what you are going to say next or about other things in general.
Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about media relations here in the next couple slides. One thing we just want to make sure that everyone keeps in mind is that each district is going to have their own policy with dealing with the media. So make sure you talk to your management or your IPO officer within your district to find out what the policies and procedures are that would affect you and your district going forward. If you were to have any type of contact with television, the print press, anybody who works on the internet, make sure you know what you need to do before proceeding with those types of contacts and relations.
Let's talk about dealing with the television. Most districts has a protocol to follow as to who can speak with the media, especially with the television. When you're the project manager, and if you're requested and allowed by your department to speak with the television, you should stick with your project fact sheet, the information on your project fact sheet. You can develop an elevator speech, which would be made up of the facts about the project. And this would be the critical information about the project. You should respond immediately if you get a call from the television station. Whatever is your district protocol, you should respond or pass it on to the appropriate person and monitor to make sure the response has been made. Remember, you are the project manager and you are the person that has been contacted. So respond immediately. Be prepared to have your information about the projects and all the details. Do not get sidetracked by the television station trying to put words in your mouth. Keep it simple and stick to your project facts. And you can tell them you do not have the information they want, or you can actually know what your disclaimer is before you go to speak with the television if you're allowed to do so. Okay, we want to also talk about the print media, which is what most project managers get involved with. Print media comes in many forms, such as magazines, newspaper, billboard, etc. Unlike television, print media is easier to access and also less stressful to deal with from a project manager's perspective. There are both advantages and disadvantages to using print media. Print media typically has more consistent base of readers than the internet. If you choose to use a magazine, a newspaper, for your print media source, the consistency of reader is easier to see. In addition, print media allows you the ability to select where you want your message to appear geographically. Print media also provide flexibility in the size of space, and if you're into advertisement, in this case, this would not apply to the project manager. Nonetheless, print media is a very viable option to getting your project information out. The best thing to do is to plan well and understand that the print media is one of the many ways and many options you can use to reach your audience, your target audience. Nonetheless, remember that print media is a very viable option for a local market and to meet your local stakeholders and provide in varying degrees of pricing for your project budget. The best thing to do is plan well and understand that print media is one of the many other options you can use to reach your target audience. Let's talk a little about the web presence, the internet. The World Wide Web is a place where almost anyone can create a presence. The web is a way of accessing this information, and it is an inexpensive method of getting your project information out. Let's confine our activities to most of the DOT-approved websites. In this case, we'll use the Twitter and the Facebook and also the DOT Internet Project websites. One thing we should bear in mind is that fact is the key, and we should also make sure our contents that we put on the internet is a current and accurate information. And these information should also be periodically or appropriately updated as needed, so that the stakeholders and the general public interested in your projects are seeing the most up-to-date information on the internet at any given time.
All right, let's get back to where we were in the beginning, just to wrap up where we started. The quote we have from George Bernard Shaw: the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. So let's remember those facts we talked about earlier. Openly, honestly, and timely communication is important. Now you've had a chance to look at main tips and tricks that will enable you to have a seamless project coordination. As stated in the beginning and throughout the workshop, the key project coordination is communication. In summary, never assume communication has occurred. Remember to update others on key items and possible issues. Remember to let people know where you are and how you can be reached. Remember to acknowledge others in a timely manner, even if you don't have an answer. Okay, now that we've wrapped up the presentation, as mentioned before in the presentation, we have resources that you can go back and get additional information on communications. It was briefly mentioned on our mutual gains negotiations, email etiquette, working with the officials through our CPT programs. You can locate those in Learning Curve. There's additional courses that may be in Learning Curve that you can look at. There's also a section in the PD&E manual that goes over public involvement, which has been a useful resource for both the PD and design side of the department. If you also want to get additional information, contact your PIO, your management, your DCPME, your district consultant project management engineer, or another senior project manager that may be able to add this information to you. Once you have those resources to you and available, make you more efficient and prepare you for that next engagement, whether it's team building, just general communication, or working with the public. So with that, we will talk to you at the next webinar series. Look for that invite through an email or contact mail or email, and we look forward to speaking to you again soon. Thanks. Have a good day.